This is Loki with Blue Collar Prepping. If you've been watching the news or following Facebook or anything recently, you probably heard the term avocado hand. Avocado hand is when people who were not raised around knives try and use knives to do something moderately difficult and end up injuring themselves because nobody taught them how to safely use a knife. I learned at 11 years old how to safely use a knife. I wonder about people who don't, but in the sake of education, we'll go over some knife safety. Now, we've discussed several times how to sharpen a knife. Let's talk about why a sharp knife is important. A sharp knife requires less force to cut through whatever object you're cutting. Therefore, you're not going to be pushing on as hard, leaning on it. It's not going to slip or bind, and that's when you get hurt. The other big knife safety thing is much similar to the first rule of gun or the second rule of gun safety. Don't point at anything you're not wanting to destroy. Don't put anything on the sharp side of a knife that you're not willing to have cut. If you get your hand on the sharp side of a knife, you very well risk being cut, and that's just not fun. So, there's a few other knife safety things specific to certain kinds of knives. We'll go over some of those. The first old kind of knife is a standard spring type folding knife. Opens up nice and solid. It's a spring type knife. There's a spring back here. You can see as I open it, that pops out and then locks back in. That holds the knife from flopping around. Now, when you use one of these knives, you want to make sure that the blade is not wobbly. Make sure that that the spring holds tightly. As you open and close the knife, you can hear, feel, and see that spring come into place. When you close the knife, you'll notice I keep all the parts of me that I don't want cut away from where that blade's going to go. Closes it nice and safely. These are wonderfully convenient. This one's fairly large. It's an older one. A lot of the smaller ones fit up, drop nicely into your pocket. Easy to carry with you everywhere you go. The other side of style is what we call a fixed blade knife. You'll note this blade does not turn, flop. It's a solid piece of steel from there all the way to there. You can see it all the way through the handle. That's actually called the tang. Full tang knives like that, they're very solid. They won't bend, close up on you. They're great for doing heavy work. This happens to be a phenomenal skinning knife for hunting trips. When you're working with one of these, the big thing to make sure of, other than it's sharp, is that your handles aren't loose. They've got these things called scales, and they can work loose sometimes. Make sure those are tight, firmly affixed. Otherwise your hand will slip and you get hurt. Fixed blade knife requires a sheath to cover and protect the blade, and generally it has to be worn on a belt, so it's a little less convenient for day-to-day use, but if you're doing hard work, heavy work, this is the way to go. Now, splitting that difference is what we call a locking knife. Folds up, goes right into your pocket. However, once it's open, it has a locking mechanism here that holds it much like a fixed blade knife. Not quite as secure, but pretty close. Especially this particular design. This is the traditional style. You see the notch here in the back that holds that spring. To close it, push that in, and close the blade. Problem with these kind of knives is the tendency to push that in and then close it right on your hand. And that's a good way to get cut. I've done it myself. So you'll notice, keep your hand out of the way. There's a few more modern styles. There's a side locking setup like this here that has that side lock. When it opens up, it's still fairly secure. Not quite as solid because it doesn't have that solid piece of steel all the way down the back. However, when I close it, I pull back and my entire hand is out of the way. It's a much safer mechanism for locking. It also has a lock so it doesn't open up in my pocket. It's kind of a nice little feature on a lot of those. We also have one very popular thing called liner lock. This particular style, there's a little tab right here. You simply push it to the side. The blade closes away. Again, it encourages you to keep your hand out of the way. On all your locking knives, make sure your blade doesn't wiggle or twist, that everything's secure here. You feel and you hear it lock in. They're fairly safe. The other big knife safety tip, a knife is not a pry bar. If you start prying with the tip of a knife, you'll get that result right there. I made the critical error of trying to pry something out of a floor in a building I was working on and destroyed my knife. Not a fun mistake to make, and it's one of those life lessons, but a knife is not a pry bar. It is a knife. It's not a screwdriver. It is a knife. Start doing non-knife things, you'll damage your knife, and then you won't have your knife when you need it. Whatever knife you choose, and you choose the one appropriate to the task based on the size, the style of knife. I'm not going to take that. I carry this with me everywhere, but that's not my first choice. If I'm going to go out hunting and skinning, I go for the fixed blade for that. I prefer locking knives. They don't close up on you. That old one there, it's a pretty solid knife, but a lot of them have a lighter spring than that. So whatever knife you choose, make sure it's in good working order. Keep it sharp. Keep things you don't want cut away from the sharp part of the blade, and you won't end up with avocado hand or whatever they're going to call it next year.